Hi, Dr. Bright. It's so good to have you on my podcast. Thank you so much for being here. For people that are first timers to you, I want you to share your story, how you came to carnivore, and how it is that you started working with women and men on thyroid and adrenal health.
Okay, so I came to carnivore. I was an osteopath and naturopath. Went into menopause at 52. I'm now 63. And I read about menopause because it hadn't occurred to me that anything might change. So I researched, I did a deep dive into menopause and the history of the idea of menopause. And that's why I wrote Good Fat is Good for Women, because I was horrified by what humans, specifically male medical professionals, made menopause into a horrible thing that means that we degenerate and all these symptoms that are associated with menopause that actually don't have anything to do with menopause. So that's why I started looking at, I had already been interested in thyroid function and adrenal function because I had patients who came back to me after I had adjusted them and it was of a certain age, 40s, 50s. And instead of just manipulating, I went into naturopathy to figure out if their diet had anything to do with their inability to get better.
Yeah. So for midlife women, can you connect the nervous system, the adrenals, and the thyroid in a way that kind of makes sense for them? Because I know that most people explain it and it doesn't make sense. And why is dysregulation in one of these areas impacting all of the others?
Okay, so people have heard of the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus, the pituitary axis, but there's also the HTA axis. There's the thyroid. All these hormones, all these glands connect to each other. There's crosstalk. So they talk to each other in the sense that, okay, you make some, you make some, you make some. And the sympathetic nervous system is how we engage in our environment. So the skin is a very sympathetic organ. People who have sores or rashes, or that's going to be part of a dysfunctional response to stress in the sense that your body is kind of overreacting, just like asthma is, to maybe not overreacting if it's some kind of yucky detergent or something like that. But people will break out into sores and eczema and psoriasis. And that has been associated with low cortisol levels. Asthma is also low cortisol levels. So, 10 people standing in the same line and one of them gets an asthma attack, their lung tissue is hypersensitive, whereas the other people's is not. And why is that? It's because their immune system is overprotective. So when we've been through trauma, when we've been through physiological deficiencies, that can cause our immune system to be overprotective, just like, the kid that's been beaten and it's always raising its hands, or, sometimes I use a puppy, but it's something that is just natural to protect ourselves from this barrage of overstimulation.
I want to go back to the menopause thing that you were talking about a few minutes ago. Women tend to get diagnosed with a disease of menopause and now perimenopause. I'd love to hear your take on that and how, it's just that we're aging and we've suddenly become diseased because we're older and we can't have children. What is it really? Because that's what we're told and that's what women believe. And they're like, oh, I'm coming into perimenopause. And I'm like, so interesting.
Yeah, well, this is very upsetting to me because it's not true. I mean, they're not diseased. Menopause, perimenopause doesn't exist. It was invented by pharmaceutical companies. An obstetrician in the 1980s said, oh, yeah, they just came up with that. It's easy to invent something so you can sell more product. The deep dive into that would be that there is only fertility and infertility. And infertility means you can't make babies. Why can't you make babies? Because unless you have serious thyroid issues, right? If you're 52, 55, whatever, it's because you're not supposed to make babies forever. Chimps die at 50 because they never stop making babies. Women instead live until their 80s or 90s because we have menopause. Menopause is something that human females evolved to have. When we became human, our brains got bigger. We ate more animal fat. We evolved to have menopause so that we live longer and can take care of our grandkids.
Do you think that menopause is just a graduation of childbearing years and then you become maybe a mentor and you give wisdom to the younger generation? It's not a place that your life is over.
Absolutely not. So you can have menopause, obviously, if you don't have children, but orcas are another species that go into menopause and they these old menopausal orcas actually lead the younger orcas, killer whales, to the hunting grounds that they remember. So, it's the analogy of human women knowing where that is and where to get that. And, the wildebeest passed this way 30 years ago. This is something that an accumulation of knowledge that does absolutely not mean that we decay. So the reason why this happens is because women are just for making babies, according to the medical male gaze. So if we're not making babies, what the heck are we there for?
Yeah.
Hence, medicine has continued this, especially, it's always been, even Hippocrates said that women shriveled up into nothing, and what were they good for? When they got menopause. And women have had menopause pretty much in their 50s since Hippocrates. So it's quite upsetting. And when they were able to isolate estrogens from horse urine, and they also did urine from males in prison and concentration camps, when they were able to isolate it, they said, yeah, we because women fall apart, don't they? At 50, here you go. Take this.
I was just thinking before you went there, we're told that we need hormones and we need hormone therapy when we get older. Could that actually be related to diet versus needing medication?
So in the adrenal hormone cascade, we make all those hormones. So, so in the 80s, they figured out when they castrated men with prostate cancer that they kept making testosterone. So the testes were gone, or they weren't making anything. And they still had the same levels of testosterone. So like, huh. And they figured out that it's the 50% of testosterone in males is all their lives is made via adrenal production, synthesized from DHEA. In women, much of it is the same, not just made in the ovaries, also in cellular, it's called endocrinology, so not endocrinology. It's made in different tissues from, again, DHEA, which comes from the adrenals. But after menopause, all of the steroid hormones come from the adrenals. So the steroid hormone cascade is the same. Animal fat, pregnenolone, the stress response, which is cortisol, then progesterone, and cortisol, aldosterone, and all the way to the right, testosterone and the estrogens. So if you don't eat cholesterol, how are you going to make those hormones? Our liver only produces not enough to ramp up steroid hormone production when we're stressed, when we're menopausal, or when we have high cortisol levels.
It's kind of important for people to understand that the stress levels in their life also impact their health on such a deep level.
Oh, yeah. Literally, stress causes you to have higher cortisol levels, which causes you to make more cortisol, which means you're all the way on the left side of the cascade. And the estrogen and testosterone, women are now taking synthetic testosterone. You're not going to synthesize adequate quantities for your tissue needs of the estrogens and the testosterone. However, biochemically, the synthetics have absolutely no relation to what you make in your own body. So the molecules are not even the same. A steroid molecule has to attach to the ligand on the receptor, the tissues that want it, lock and key, but it's not going to do that because it's like got three thumbs, it's not going to attach. So what they actually do is raise cortisol levels. And that's why some people say, oh, I feel better since I started taking HRT. Yeah, because you're raising your cortisol levels. You had a cortisol issue because you've been running marathons, yo-yo dieting, avoiding fat, et cetera, et cetera.
What's the consequence for them? Because they're feeling good right now because their cortisol is higher, but what happens long term? Like, what's going to happen?
They crash because the pituitary will not allow you to have a falsely inflated cortisol. As war and trauma and famine can cause you to have high cortisol too. Hypothyroidism can cause you to have high cortisol too. What happens over time is that because cortisol is inflammatory, it burns brain neurons, it fractures bones. The pituitary will shut off the production of ACTH. And strangely, people associate anxiety and stress and feeling that way with high cortisol, but you get the same feelings with low cortisol. And we know that PTSD is low cortisol, reactive hypoglycemia is low cortisol. So you have to think of high cortisol as like, I always explain it as like your head is touching the ceiling and you can't go any higher. So if your cortisol levels are high, you can't make any more. And if shit hits the fan, what are you going to do? You will not be able to react to the stress that's happening.
So, can they heal from that?
Yes, of course they can. Of course they can. You have to reduce stressors. It's very difficult for people today. I'm always pulling people off of treadmills and telling them to stop exercising because, I mean, I'm an athlete. I love exercising, but I had to stop for 2 years because I messed up my cortisol levels. You do not live longer if you're exercising. You just can lift your groceries without, you can do it yourself. You can lift your grandchild. You can pick up heavy stuff. That's what the muscles are for. It's not to make you live longer. It's not for your heart. That all came with the high cholesterol hypothesis when they took our fat.
Women that are so women that over exercising and they are killing themselves in the gym or at home and they're doing more and they're at standing desks and they're, doing too many things. What would you say to them? Because you said you stopped exercising for 2 years. How did you know that it was time for you to reintroduce and what did you reintroduce?
So I'm a kung fu master. And I had done a lot of fighting and I had students and I performed forms and I just felt terrible. I always had back pain and I tested my cortisol levels and they were flatlined. What did I do? I did nothing for 2 years and I was carnivore by that time. So I had high fat carnivore diet. And then I started with some functional, I got one of those TRX bands really slowly. And then I did kettlebells and then I moved to a place closer to the sea. I mean, where I live closer to the sea, and I started paddleboarding. So if I went running, I can do 6K for an hour and my heart rate's high, but I feel great. I have no cortisol issues. But if I went running, I would have cortisol issues. So it's something about being on the water that's meditative for me.
So you actually, I think you said running twice. So when you paddleboard, you feel amazing, but when you run, not so much. There's so many things I could ask you. I know a lot of my clients and a lot of the women I talk to are very concerned about eating high fat. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but they also are concerned about not exercising because they feel like that's keeping them where they are. And that if they stop or if they let their body just rest and not do any of that, that they're going to get really overweight and gain a lot of fat.
Well, that comes from the calories in, calories out. People 50 years ago ate because they had to, and they worked because they had to, and they climbed stairs because they had to. And, it's only in our new world of cars and elevators and being on the computer too long that we are very high cortisol levels and we've avoided eating. I mean, I was fasting when I was 15. I fainted before a ski trip because I hadn't eaten before we went. I didn't eat for 2 days. Stupid. Because I wanted to have size 27, 28, like Debbie Doyle. I wanted the jeans that she had because she was the most popular girl. So I've done all that. I understand it. I've got 3 kids, 2 daughters, and I didn't gain any weight when I stopped exercising. I just healed.
When women are under eating or they're doing long term calorie restriction, how does that over time affect the thyroid, the adrenals, the hormones, the metabolism, especially in women?
Well, women make more hormones than men. Adolescents, that's why good fat is good for girls. Women need a lot more fat. Females need a lot more fat. I mean, need more fat, make more hormones, need more iodine, need more to make more thyroid hormone during adolescence because they have to build sexual characteristics. So since we invented agriculture, I check my patients, when did you first get your period? And it's 10, 11, 12. We're not supposed to get a period till we're 16. So generationally, I got my period when I was 15, which is, kind of closer to 16 than 11, 12. So, what happens is that you can't make hormones if you're not eating fat. Your thyroid, if you're under eating, your thyroid is a growth hormone in the sense that it won't make any new tissue. It'll step backwards. It's like, dancing backwards. It'll regress. It'll stop making thyroid hormone if there's no food for it to make hormone.
So, fasting, intermittent fasting, fasting and not being fat adapted. What do women need to know about that?
Well, really don't recommend fasting, and I don't recommend intermittent fasting. The time, if you're waiting till, I don't know, 2, 3 o'clock, 6 p.m. to eat, all you're doing is dieting. You're dieting. You're not eating. You're reducing your calories. Your cortisol will be high until you eat. Your body expects you to nibble on something. expect some fat in the morning to reach that high peak of cortisol, of the circadian rhythm. People used to have farmer's breakfast and then they used to go off and work. So, it's very detrimental. And women are doing it because of the same my body, my body, my body. I have to look this way. Now guys are breaking their legs and sticking steel pipes in to be taller. So, there's not really, you know, it just seems to be getting worse.
Okay, so let's talk about the 1,200 calorie diet that every woman in the world thinks is for them. It doesn't matter how tall they are, how much they weigh, how physically active they are, their age. What is the deal with that, and what is it doing to their body?
Well, they're raising cortisol levels. They're going to make themselves gain more weight. When you have high cortisol levels, you can't process your blood sugar. Your liver will make more sugar. So the visceral fat and the belly fat is famous for Cushing's, which is when your body is, when your adrenals have a tumor and they're overproducing cortisol nonstop. That's a symptom of uh, high cortisol. So I don't know, the 1,200 calorie, I had a book when I was 15, it was 500 calories a day. So it just, this was it was a paperback that probably ruined 3 years of my life. I don't know. I mean, we know from um, science that eating too little makes your thyroid stop making hormones. So you're just wreaking havoc on your endocrine system. And if they're thinking that that's okay for a little while, uh, if you do it as a teenager, you can have issues for the rest of your life.
When they look at the scale and they're doing that and they see the scale is moving, is the scale telling them they lost fat or is it probably that they lost muscle?
Probably they lost muscle, but the scale will move for a while. It won't, it'll move. I mean, actually, I could fast and lose weight for a week. I wouldn't fast for a week, but like I'd fast 2 days or one day. And then I got pregnant and my body said, heck no, no more. We're not going to allow you to lose weight. We're going to make you eat. So if you think this is working, it's not working. So often it doesn't work. It doesn't, it works for a time. And then because by default, we're supposed to make babies for a certain age. So our body is just geared to that. You don't have to do it, but that's what your body is looking for. And if you're making dangerous choices as far as your endocrine system is concerned, it'll kick you, it'll kick you in the butt.
Why do you think so many doctors default to synthetic thyroid medication instead of prescribing natural desiccated thyroid? And what are those synthetic thyroid medications actually doing in the body?
They do that because it's worse now because of COVID. So the whole mRNA thing, the things that come from animals, oh my God, that's why. But really and truly, it's because it's cheaper. Synthetics are cheaper than getting a thyroid from a pig. That's always going to be the case. What they're doing is the thyroid makes 5 hormones. If you're taking levothyroxine, you're getting 1, and it doesn't convert into the other 4. It's supposed to convert somewhat into T3, doesn't doesn't do it. It'll never convert into calcitonin, which is regulating calcium. So all these people worried about, osteoporosis and doing their DEXA scans or whatever they call, they're making things worse. Yeah. So it is all about insurance companies and how much things cost.
I've noticed that there are people that try to get natural desiccated thyroid in the US and they never actually prescribe over like 30 milligrams. So they can't actually take what they need. What should they
Right.
do?
They need to find sources to get it on their own. Yeah, they're not. It's crazy. The cutoff is 30. The moderate dose in the 80s was 180 milligrams.
For women doing high fat carnivore, what do you want them to understand about fat as fuel, especially for the thyroid and the hormone health? Because women are so afraid of fat.
Yeah, it's been indoctrinated into our brains. The thyroid is not a steroid hormone, but it responds to stress. So the fat is important for it not to. Stress can cause hypothyroidism. So if you're avoiding fat, you'll have cortisol issues, adrenal issues that will also impact your thyroid function. We evolved to eat fat. How do I make them understand that? You have to look at how humans evolved. Humans evolved. Our brain came from eating animal fat. When we started eating animal fat, we got these big brains. When we started eating agriculture, our vaginal canal changed shape, and that's why uh, women started dying during childbirth. They didn't die during the childbirth previous to agriculture.
Yeah, that does so many negative things. Okay. So, can women gain weight before they lose it when they start fueling properly? And what are the most important signs to watch so they don't panic and quit?
Your mood. So yes, you can gain if you've been dieting and fasting, and you're definitely going to put on some weight because your body's like, whoa, finally, she's out of the stress state. Let me just fix a bunch of stuff. And you need to fix, you need nourishment to fix stuff. So now panic, I mean, people always feel better mentally when they,
I guess for me, talking to women that are terrified, like they're in binge eating disorder or they have emotional eating because they've gone so low fat. And I know it can also be other things, but like they just don't want to eat the fat. And they're like, ugh, I cut that off. I'm like, well, cook it and then just drain it into a dish, salt it, and put it either in the fridge or the freezer and eat it as a dessert because you're still getting it and you need it. They think that the burger patty or the steak counts for all of its macronutrients if they drain the fat and throw it away. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not how it works.
right, no. I mean, we evolved to eat fatty meats and fat off the animal. I mean, I go to the butcher and I get 3 big bags of fat to make my tallow. People, it's just, I mean, even some men, I mean, my husband's like, I'm amazed. Eat that fat. He's like, no, I don't like the texture. They're taught that. They're taught, well, we've been taught that all our lives.
It's so frustrating. So, should women be eating sticks of butter a day? And how do you decide what high fat actually means for an individual woman?
80/20. I mean, if you're 5'10", you're going to need, I mean, I'm 5'7", so 5'7", 5'7" and a half. I need less fat than somebody who's 5'10". I need less protein than somebody who's 5'10". I just say the anti-inflammatory fixed stuff ratio is 80/20 for women, and you can figure that out in sticks of butter or ounces of tallow, you just have to calculate it, what 80/20 is.
Okay. And can you briefly talk about that? Like, how would they know that? I eat 80/20 burger patties. But, like, I know that I have the Fat Secret app, so I put all my things in there, but how would they know how many fat grams they need? I know it's like height, but how would they know how much protein that they need?
Okay, so protein is overrated. I mean, I literally put like usually most people being around 5'5" or 2, to 5'6", 5'7". I give about 160 grams of fat and 90 grams of protein, but that's net protein. So you have to use something to calculate it because you know protein has water and fat in it. You got to separate them. If you're just eating beef jerky, it's just going to be protein. I said that stick of butter, a pound of meat thing years ago because I was trying to give somebody a visual guide, but that was for my height, you know?
Yeah. So is fatty red meat more beneficial than chicken or turkey or like fat free for most women? And if so, why? And what other meats are like when are other meats totally fine?
Ruminant meats are the best. They have the most iron content. Women eat iron. Chicken is a higher omega. Other ones that aren't ruminant have higher omega-6, which can make them somewhat inflammatory. Chickens are very much biologically evolutionarily messed with. So are pigs. We haven't been able to mess with the cows as much and the lamb. So sheep, I would say that they eat grass. Kangaroo, if you're in Australia. Those are the meats I recommend. Eggs are good if you don't react to the egg white. I mean, you have to try things out. First you remove things and then you put them back.
And so, for somebody who comes to carnivore and they're told they should eat all the carnivore things, do you recommend them starting just with red meat for at least 2 to 4 weeks so they can calm their nervous system and their body down versus just doing all the things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what all the carnivore things are. I mean,
Like, some people are like, you should eat pork and you should eat chicken and
no,
you should eat, all these things. And I'm like, I reined it in because I got a histamine response immediately to pork and ground beef and was sick with like cold like symptoms for 3 weeks. So I
yeah.
was like, yeah, no.
No, I personally, I never eat pork or chicken. My husband does sometimes. I just feel better and more nourished. But if you're trying to fix something, it would be better to take other meats out, other carnivore foods out for 2 weeks, and then you add them in individually. Like start with egg yolk and eat that add that for 4 days, and then your protein. content is obviously going to go up a little bit if you add 2 egg yolk, because there's egg yolk is equal cholesterol and protein. So it doesn't matter. By that time, you don't need to be counting anymore because you are eating what you are hungry for usually when you're
So,
fixed.
what if women overeat on meat? Like, what if they don't even try the Fat Secret app and they just eat until they're satiated and they just eat a lot?
And they eat only meat and they don't add fat.
Well, maybe they're eating fatty red meat.
Fatty red meat is not going to be as much as adding fat. If you're trying to heal, you need to add too much protein turns into glucose.
Mhm.
So I never ketones, and I'm using ketosis as a healing modality.
Right. Women like to eat carnivore because it makes them feel good, but then they see something that's not carnivore and they eat it. What is that doing to their ketosis and their healing process?
Well, anything more than 20 grams is going to kick them out of ketosis, but they can, if they follow, they go back to eating on plan the next day, they'll be back in ketosis. It depends on
Okay.
if they've had issues, if they have blood sugar issues, if they have depression, anxiety, bipolar, all those things are way more sensitive than me to eating a carbohydrate that, that's going to kick you out of ketosis.
Especially like in the beginning. I met Emily Penton and she actually had like major mental health issues and went carnivore and all of it just went away. And if she ever would go back, that would come right back. Yeah. And so I don't think people understand the connection between I call them the four horsemen of illness: grains, seed oils, sugars, and processed foods, and what they do to the body. And instead of looking at what they're eating, they're going and getting medications, which are chemically altering their bodies. And I'm not against people taking their own meds. I'm not telling them to stop, but I think that it's not looked at deeply enough that nutrition is highly connected with how our bodies are responding and like just living.
Right. That's the root cause. Medication is never going to be fixing the root cause. It's just jagging symptoms. So if the root cause, if malnourished and that has caused you to have thyroid and cortisol issues, addressing those would be much better than taking antidepressants or hypertension medication.
Right. What about binge eaters? What about the people who created like their eating problem when they were younger? Maybe they went into dance and they were around other kids and they learned all these behaviors and then it's just like hardwired to their brain. How can they stop being afraid of the fat and eating super lean on carnivore and expecting it to work? And they just believe that the fat's going to make them fat. I know we keep going there, but I've had so many people talk to me about, I can't eat the fat. I can't eat the fat. The fat's going to make me fat. And I'm like, actually, it's going to heal you. It may make you gain weight, but that will come off because you're giving your body, it's got to like learn what it needs to do because you've taken over. And it's not like, your body didn't know how to take care of you. It's just that you didn't believe that it could do its job, like your heart beats for you and you don't tell it what to do and your lungs breathe for you. You do not tell that to happen, but your body already knew. But you learned these behaviors, you created this chaos, and they're, in midlife now. And this has been going on since they were like a child. So I would love to know how they could start to take in fat and not be so overwhelmed. And maybe it could be a step-by-step process, baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps, small amounts of fat. But if they're not digesting it or they keep having blood sugar issues, meaning they keep wanting to have stimulation, they have cortisol issues. So they need to test it for their thyroid. I mean, if it's been going on since they were a teenager, there's no way their endocrine system is not imbalanced. So they can keep on trying to eat the fat, but there may be something else that they need to do in order to recalibrate their, the people are always talking about addiction. There's no such thing as addiction. It's basically a need for energy. You need energy. And we know from putting sugar in our mouth that we get immediate energy. It raises cortisol levels. People who drink alcohol to excess or do drugs or do Ironman, whatever, those triathlons, they all are addicted to energy and cortisol. They may not want to eat fat because they're not high anymore. If they're
Mm.
high, they're blood sugar issue on that cortisol.
So deeply, they need to start looking at other things, just not looking at their diet. Salt, iodine, and thyroid function, it confuses a lot of women. What do you want women to know about salt and iodine and electrolytes on carnivore? And what are the most common signs that something's off?
Cramping, fatigue. I mean, if you don't eat carbohydrates, you need salt. You need a minimum of a teaspoon a day. It doesn't matter if you're adding it to your food, salting your meat or whatever, it's not going to be enough. So, and when you're stressed, you need more salt. So if are busy and you've got 4 kids or you're working really hard and a schedule your adrenals need a lot of salt. Iodine is just everybody needs iodine because the world is polluted with iodine disruptors.
What about tracking? I think that a lot of women have like tracked to way too much, but could they learn to track just to get the basis of like what food looks like and maybe what the carnivore meals that they like, they can actually track what's in it just to get a sense of what that is, maybe on the Fat Secret app.
Yeah, I like that because it doesn't scream too much about calories and, uh, you know, macronutrients. No, like, that carb manager, it does all the Bs and the selenium, and it's all bull because you get it all from your meat anyway. You get the fat soluble vitamins from your fat. So I don't like applications that tell you, oh, you need more of this, selling supplements.
Yeah. What should women expect in the first few weeks when they start carnivore? And what signs tell you that the body is adapting in a healthy direction?
Well, some people, if they have thyroid issues, may or they if thyroid issues, they'll have digestive issues, they won't make enough bile, they may need to have a supplement, hydrochloric acid or, lipogold or something like that if they're having diarrhea. Sometimes people get diarrhea, or they just need to, um, wait until their body becomes fat adapted. I would usually reduce the m more to eat more fat more times a day than reducing the fat.
And they should
And what
eat cold fat, right? Not rendered.
some people have more diarrhea with rendered, I don't think people should be drinking cups of tallow. That's a lot for your liver, your intestine has to have enough bile to render it soluble. Literally, I mean, when you're there, you don't have to think about it, cold, hot, you're eating fat. I snack on fat throughout the day because I'm working.
So you could be getting more than 160 grams of fat a day.
I don't know. I think I tracked when I went to the gym. My husband joined a gym and I was just paddleboarding and I went and I tracked a little. No, I can't even remember though, Christina. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just like, it's interesting that women are so focused on those numbers and trying to keep them below a certain number. And I know for healing, it's important. You don't want to eat too much protein because that will cause insulin to rise. That will cause a lot of issues. But you also don't want to undereat it. So it's like, it's a happy medium. And I know that as we work together, you taught me that, fat was more important. I know when I saw you at Hack Your Health, you were hunting tallow, you weren't hunting meat. Why was that?
Yeah, because the meat was easily found, but the tallow wasn't easily found. And I wanted some tallow. I didn't want to just eat butter. So, I was hunting tallow. Yeah, I was trying to get tallow. Because I make my own and I eat, 50% tallow, 50% butter. Yeah, protein it's easier to find meat than good fat sources.
Digestion, as we were talking about that, it can be weird because some people are constipated or maybe they don't have a lot left over after they eat really good meat. I mean, should they be going to the bathroom every day?
I would say every other day. A lot of people have hypothyroid, Christina. Many, many,
Hmm.
many, many hypothyroid. That causes constipation.
Okay, so they should be going to the bathroom regularly. A lot of carnivores say, oh, you digested all of it. There was nothing left over. So you shouldn't really go to the bathroom.
Well, there's definitely less volume than if you had there's less to poop out because
Hmm.
there's just less fiber, I still think that, if you go, if it's, I do think that you still want to kind of have a regular bowel movement. It doesn't have to be every day. The vegans want to go like 2 or 3 times a day, right? That's a totally different thing.
And so could it be that they're actually too low on salt? And that's another reason they're not going? I
Yeah,
notice when I
everybody.
take more salt, I actually go more often.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody's afraid of salt. They've been taught to be afraid of salt too.
Yeah, they're afraid of salt, butter, and red meat. The three main nutrient dense, foods that we need. I actually met someone recently that had been diagnosed with bile acid diarrhea and
Mhm.
put on a medication. And they actually realized after meeting me and starting to work with me that she decided she was going to go off of it to see what happened. And she's fine.
Right.
She doesn't have a gallbladder. And I think people are
Yeah.
afraid of fat when they don't have a gallbladder, but the gallbladder doesn't actually make anything. Doesn't it store something?
Stores bile. The liver is supposed to make the bile. And gallbladder is just that we are born with a gallbladder. We evolved to have a gallbladder just means that we humans are supposed to eat a lot of fat.
If they don't have a gallbladder, should they take it easy when they first come into carnivores?
The liver's supposed no, they don't need to worry about eating fat if they don't have a gallbladder. As you said, it doesn't make the bile. The liver makes the bile.
Maybe if they're having things go through them, like you talked about before, they could take lipogold. And is the
Yeah.
betaine HCl, is that for the protein
Protein.
to break down? Okay. If they have loose stool or they have acid diarrhea, which I mean, this person was like, it was detrimental to her day. Like it took a lot of her time of her day. But she realized as we've been working together that it's not about diagnoses and it's not about a list of things. It's about what does she want and how does she want to think about her health, because she was really focused on remembering and knowing how to explain every single diagnosis that she had. And it was a lot. So
Yeah.
I just had her decide what she wanted to work on instead, and then release that other stuff and just focus on the goal. And it's been crazy to watch her in just like 3 weeks release so many things and like feel so much better. And she didn't really change anything but the way she was thinking.
It's like in America, everybody wrote a bar for everything. People are afraid of their bodies.
Yes, they are. Women who like to eat grains occasionally, or they want to do carnivore and they want to eat sourdough bread every day. How's that work?
It doesn't because the whole fermentation propaganda now is just that, it's just a offshoot of making you don't want to eat vegetables because they cause you this, so here, let's ferment them and they'll be better because humans used to do that. That's because humans, many humans died eating vegetables and they figured out some ways to make them less poisonous, like soaking beans overnight. Are you still getting gluten sourdough bread? It's just a fraction less if it's fermented.
What about all the carnivores who are drinking fermented juice that comes from the fermented vegetables?
Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. Whole fermentation, it's just the past year, I use Ngram Viewer, and you go see when a word was started being in publication. And it's amazing to see it skyrocket, when, what year, it's just trends.
So people that aren't drinking fermented juice or eating homemade yogurt and all of that stuff, they're actually okay with carnivore. They just may have other things going on they need to address.
Exactly. The microbiome, when you go carnivore, the microbiome switches to the carnivore microbiome in 2 weeks. The supposed microbiome that everybody's trying to increase the species thereof is actually regulated by vasoactive peptide, which is regulated by T3 hormone. We don't need to have critters in our gut to break down vegetables and grain if we're not eating them.
Because you're going to change your microbiome if you're drinking that fermented juice, and you're going to
Yeah.
take it away from carnivore to
Yeah.
other bugs. All right. So you're an author,
Mhm.
and I have several of your books. I would like you to talk about your books, and especially for midlife women, what should they be reading and how can that help them solve some of their health issues?
Okay, so good fat is good for women. Menopause, it's for, I guess everybody who is worrying about perimenopause and worried about fat because it describes how fat improves your health. Good fat is good for girls is really important to tell you the why. Health issues that started during if you have health issues, most of them started during adolescence because of a lack of iodine, thyroid issues, and all these toxins. Toxins meaning the vegetables we're taught to eat, the fasting. I address a lot of mental health issues and how that starts with adolescence because we're not eating right and we're not building sexual characteristics accurate. There's nothing left over for our brain and our general health. And then power of your thyroid and adrenals is just that. It's my scientific deep dive into uh, all the different many, many, many people have diagnoses, autism, all these things and why they're caused by low thyroid function, vision loss, etc. Eczema and psoriasis, adrenals, and then I explain how I treat those issues in practice or
So, do
did.
you have in your book how they could figure out their macros? I know we mentioned it earlier, but is that in the book?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where
It's
is it in the book?
good. Good fat is good for women.
Awesome. What do you wish you would have known before you started carnivore? And what tip would you offer women in midlife who are transitioning? And where can people find you?
Well, now I'm pretty much retired, semi-retired. I'm just doing the group with the Steak and Butter Gal. Um, I don't know. I transitioned pretty easily to high fat carnivore. I did my research, so I knew I had to eat a lot of fat. I didn't have any issues with that. Maybe I wish I'd known how much salt I needed to address stress. It's gone. I researched, so I didn't really have any issues with understanding it and believing in it wholeheartedly immediately.
I started carnivore April 14th of 2023, and I met you on July 4th of
Mhm.
2023. We've worked together for about 2.5 years, and I wouldn't have been here and wouldn't have stayed with it if I didn't meet you. And I did 60 hours of research the very first week before I started because I was scared of carnivore. I was scared of eating meat. I was scared of eating fat. And I was like thinking it was crazy. But with the histamine response I had, I realized
Mhm.
that I needed something. And then I found you pretty early on. So I'm glad that you're retired and I'm excited for your group with Bella. And how can women find out about that if they want to join, if they want to talk to you, if they want to get some tests done?
It's on my website, Elizabeth. There's a link. I think that what people forget, what women forget, men don't think about it very much, but or not as much, but what humans evolved, how we evolved to be. I've been questioning authority since I was a preteen, so it was very easy for me to cholesterol hypothesis bullshit, menopause, I'm like bullshit. It was very easy for me to come to that. Obviously, I backed it up with research. Question authority. Question why they're telling you this, why they're selling you that, why they're giving you that, why.
Exactly. I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes and I'm really excited. So you're going to come out the week after Bella. Bella comes out next Thursday and then you'll be the following Thursday. So I will definitely let you know. And thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Oh, Christina, it's nice to see you.